We have our very own Dr. McGrath that will be with us today, and we have my co-host, Lisa Paddock. Lisa, if you wouldn't mind putting up our QR code so that our participants are able to access the information.
Happy to, Phil.
Thank you very much. And if the participants or the attendees would please see that there is a QR code on the screen here. And just like on Facebook Live, if you will please put your camera up to that, you'll be able to access our training survey, our training sign-in, and at the end, you'd be able to download and print off a copy of a certificate for being here today. All right, so again, my name is Jill Summerlot. I'm the webinar coordinator with InSource, and I'd like to introduce my co-host, Lisa Paddock.
Thank you, Jill. Welcome, everyone. We are so glad that you've taken time out today to join us for our year in review with our own director, Dr. Don McGrath. I'm Lisa Paddock. I'm one of the assistant directors at InSource, and we're so happy that you've joined us. So today, after you scan the QR code, we're going to hear from Don McGrath, and Don is well known all across the state, and she has many accomplishments that we could list, but state director, school administrator, teacher, mom, and of course our executive director are just a few of her wonderful accomplishments. So we are so happy you've joined us today. So please get ready to find out about what InSource has been doing this year. And also, if you have questions, please make sure you put them in the chat box. Don would love to be able to answer those, and we want to be able to share information about InSource, your parent training and information center. So without further delay, I will turn it over to Don. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Lisa. That was such a kind introduction. And I just want to really compliment and recognize the two of you. You know, before we started this, you were talking about that you had been doing this for just 2 years, that you've been working together on these webinars, but you are among our cohort of our most experienced staff. You've been with us through so many years, so many changes, and you have seen a lot. And have done a lot of heavy lifting. So I really respect you, and I'm hopeful that you'll engage in this conversation as much as I am about our organization. I see you as the backbone. So, you know, when we think about our purpose, our top priorities, our number one priority, obviously, is serving families. It's family first. That's what we're all about. And I was recently in a directors meeting for executive directors around the region from other states. And the question was posed to us, are you at capacity? And I had to kind of laugh because we are always over capacity. It's kind of like when you decide to do this job, you decide that you're going to sit in a river and try to catch the water. I mean, it's just going to keep coming. There's so many needs. Families, you know, are in such a situation where they just really appreciate having someone to talk to, having someone to help them think through, you know, their thoughts and emotions, and having someone that can help them understand the laws, the procedures, and ways that they can help their child. And so in that way, we're all advocates for the children. The school's an advocate, we're an advocate, and obviously the parents are developing their advocacy through their relationship with us. Last year alone, we handled over 67,000 emails and calls. And that is in addition to that, 600 were to professionals. And so the point needs to be made that, you know, although our focus is parents, many times professionals also look to us for support and call us with questions. And so, you know, we're seen across the state as an agency that really, that knows, you know, that has answers. And so over the last year, we have been continuing, and we're probably coming to a place of stability. That's what we keep saying, but to restructure and build our capacity. And we really want to have those thick braces to handle the volume of requests and, you know, the number of people that really need us. And so when I think about the caliber of our staff, I'm so proud of the caliber of our staff. You know, we have we have attracted such dedicated people with high integrity, sincere commitment. It is really uplifting to be a part of this group. And so we've taken a look at how we can triage the needs that are coming to us. And by that term, I mean, sometimes it's just someone needs an answer. They just really have a quick question. They want to understand something a little better. And so, Lisa, this was your vision for quite some time, but we have, under the leadership of Carolyn Honeycutt, who's our Assistant Director of Operations, and Karen Rusk, who is a coordinator of the call center, we've established a call center. And we now have a dedicated call center staff, and a number of other individuals fill time slots so that we're there. We have a presence and we're answering those calls quickly. And then there are times when families really need to have an enduring relationship. Their situation is ongoing. And so that maintaining that relationship, that work is done by our regional liaisons. And also those regional liaisons are working to develop their relationships with the schools. So they're known in the schools, and that can be very helpful in bridging that. The two of you have been on the call center. You both have served time. What's your impression of the work of the call center?
Well, I think it offers great value. Obviously, years ago, I thought it would be extremely helpful to have a quick and easy mechanism to answer questions. So, of course, we have the call center and the chat feature, which both make my heart happy, because many times twofold things can happen. One, someone can get a question answered quickly and they're done and they move on. And it also means that the staff in the field, that leaves them a little more time for that more involved situation, for the parent or perhaps a school staff or an individual themselves that needs help. So I really love the fact that we have both of those components, and I think it's working very well. And of course, our goal is to return that call within that day if possible, but within 24 hours, and reach out 3 times. So that's several times to be able to reach out to try to make contact to answer that family or send them on.
Lisa, I do agree with you. Since I've been working in the call center, it really does give me that. I just really enjoy it because we are able to answer those questions very rapid for the people that are not as involved as some of our other families are. And so it's really been a great value. And it also has been kind of nice to be able to, when I was a liaison, I was kind of in, we're all in our own territory. So now I've actually talked to people across the state, and it's been rather interesting to see, just those conversations that you can have with them and know that you are helping somebody right then and there. That's a big thing, because we do want to make sure that our families get the information that they need as soon as possible. So it's been a real good thing for our organization. And I think, just like you said, it does take some of those things off of our liaisons that are in the field. And if we can take that off of them, that's better for them, so that they can really pay more attention to maybe a more severe case that they would have to be taken care of.
Yeah, well said. So out in the community across the state, we have the 5 teams: North, South, East, West, and Central. Each team has a team leader, and there are 5 liaisons on each team. 5 is the magic number here. And they report to our new Assistant Director, Sarah Cassabaugh, who leads the team leaders. So that's pretty awesome. And the website isn't quite updated yet with those new structures. But one feature that you will see soon is, instead of having to know where you are on a map, you should be able to just type in your location and it'll tell you who your liaison is. I think that will be a fantastic addition. Yeah. So when, the question you both mentioned the idea of the liaisons being able to be more closely involved with families that are in their neighborhoods there where they live. And I just recently, for this purpose, did a calculation, because there's 150,000 kids with IEPs in our state. And so obviously we can't be there for every single meeting. And we have to be selective where there are the ones that we really can make it. But still, if you were to figure everyone as a full-time, and they're not all full-time, but if you did the calculation of full-time, each one went to 94 meetings last year. I mean, that when you think of emails and phone calls, I mean, that is a lot. Meetings can take a long time. So we are going to meetings. There's just a lot of need out there. Yeah, and so another angle that we have been really working on is you've noticed I've mentioned some leadership positions. So that really I think has strengthened our organization, and also the diversification. Let me say that again: diversification of the different purposes that we have. So Jill, you're a great example of that, where you're focused on the webinars, and what you've been able to do has really relieved the local liaisons from traveling around doing trainings as much. Now we still offer in-person trainings, but the data from last year showed that only 8% of our attendees were attending in person and 92% were coming to virtual. And we really need to listen to our families, what they need. It's just not the same where someone would take a whole evening out of their week to go somewhere else to sit and hope that they hear the answer to their question. Families want to know now. And so, the work that you're doing, Jill, is really, really responsive to what we understand our parents to need. And I want you to share a little bit about, your webinar schedule and what kinds of things people can expect from that.
Well, thank you very much, Dawn. I appreciate those kind words. And this year, in 2024, we will be launching just a couple different things. You will be able to access me. I will be doing every month on Wednesday evening. You'll be able to come in and just listen to a brief topic about InSource, and then we will have one of our staff will be joining me, and we will open it up to questions and answers. And they will talk a little bit about what they do here at InSource. And so that's going to be the last Wednesday of every month for the 2024 year. And we will also be doing that from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And we'll have that posted also on our website. We do have our Spanish version of some of our information has been done. We do have January through May. You'll be able to have a Spanish version, and that will be done on Wednesday evenings as well, and that will be from 6 to 7. And so you'll be able to access that information again on our website under trainings and then under the webinars. And then there's the whole year we're going to have on another Wednesday evening, you'll be able to come in and listen to a webinar that's just strictly on our topics, like about the IEP. What is special education, the process, how can parents have better communication with schools? So those are just some of the things that will be on tap for just the evening. Now, Lisa and I will continue our 2 webinars a month on Thursdays from 1:30 to 3 with special topics and special participants. So that's just kind of what's already rolled off for the year of 2024, which I'm really excited about. And we're going to be adding some more daytime webinars that are just so that parents can jump in. And if they can come in for an hour, hour and a half and gather some information, then they'll be able to do that as well. That's
fantastic. That's excellent, Jill. That really shows the appreciation for the younger families, how they communicate. It's different from the past. I mean, I was talking to a school administrator earlier in the week, and they'd mentioned if they sent an email to a family member, sometimes they had to text them to say, check your email, because email really isn't necessarily the way that people communicate anymore. And so when you mentioned the chat, our chat is open. Is it till 10:30 at night now? So there's that flexibility and availability. And I noticed, Jill, you're mentioning hours that are unconventional outside of the business day. So those are all really great developments for ways that families can get their questions answered.
Dawn, also, I think if we go back to that point of pre-COVID and post-COVID, It really is interesting to look at, as families had to adjust and change, so did our staff in meeting their needs. So, for instance, Jill and I have been around a long time, and it was a rarity to attend a case conference virtually before. They were almost all in person. Now, many times a family is the one that says, I really need to attend virtually. So then at that point, we will also attend virtually. We do still attend some in person, as do families, but many times families have really found that it works so much better for their schedule to be able to not have to take off 5 hours a day. So that is just one of the differences that has come about. And additionally, those chat features, we do basically have someone from morning to evening available at this point. And we did that in response to families needing information quicker, a different method than email, and recognizing that perhaps people want smaller amounts of information that's topical, such as evaluation, what's an IEP? And also, as I direct people back to the YouTube channel, where Jill and I have done webinars, we had, topics that when we started wouldn't have ever occurred. Social media's impact on our students, suicide in Indiana for our students, bullying prevention. So if you go back and check those topics, you'll also find those and look forward to the next ones. But times have changed and we have to be ready to change to meet those needs.
Well said, Lisa. Yeah, we've really increased our social media presence, haven't we? A lot of that is to your credit. A lot more virtual options. So statistically, our families have received, we've had over 1 million newsletter receipts, meaning, it's sent out, some people multiple times, of course. Our media reached under just 100,000. That's how many hits we have this data because we have to report it to the feds. So we had, in addition, families still come out maybe for resource fairs and events that are kind of special and fun. So we had about 22,000 people that we talked to at resource fairs and about 185,000 web page views. So, just really, if we didn't exist, there'd be so many families that, wouldn't have what they needed to exist. Related to this, Beth Ernstberger is our Associate Director of Community Programming, and she has acquired a number of grants that have helped us with these ambitions. One in particular from AWS has allowed her to hire 2 interns with disabilities who are creating these little videos you talked about, Lisa, just tiny little 2-3 minute explaining an idea. Those will be rolling out more and more as the year goes on. So that's really fun. And also reporting to Beth is Jessica Terry, who manages our Facebook, and Michelle Alcantara reports to her, to Beth as well, with all of the Spanish availability. You mentioned it a bit, but Michelle is able to respond in both languages on chat, which is fantastic. And Beth has been working, just on the fund development, because since we're so primarily government grant funded, we can't use government grants for fundraising, just like we can't for marketing. So, we have to just keep in mind everything that we do is dependent on those government grants right now. But as a nonprofit, we really need to be thinking about ways to. We really appreciate contributions that people make, and if you're thinking of a benefactory or thinking of a way to really support our efforts. Beth would like to talk to you about that because that's important to us.
Dawn, one question, maybe while you're talking about funding, could you just give a basic description of the funding that InSource runs on? Absolutely,
yeah. So, InSource has been around since 75. And, at that point, Public Law 94-142 was kind of rolling out an idea. It was a fresh idea. Special ed was kind of this new idea. And at the time, InSource was identified as one of the first PTIs. PTI stands for Parent Training Information Center, and has had that designation since that time. And that allows us to be funded by the federal government That is from 0 to 26, which is another focus area outside of the school age that we've really worked on improving in the last year or two. So that funding was about a quarter of our funding as of last year. And 3/4 of the funding comes from a state grant. Similarly, the DOE sees the value that we bring to helping parents to understand their rights and feel supported in the process of negotiating and working with schools. And, we really believe, all of us believe, that a well-functioning system has that counterbalance, those checks and balances. And as a district administrator, I also appreciated how important it was for the parents to bring, to be a knowledgeable participant in our conversations. Valued that a lot. And so does the state. So that's where a bulk of our funding comes from. We've gotten small grants recently, one from AWS to do the videotape, the video production. That you can tell how old I am when I say videotape, right? It's not even a thing anymore. That I mentioned earlier. We also received a Lilly grant that's supporting our marketing efforts. So that's really exciting. And, there's been other little contracts and smaller and proportionally smaller. So we operate from now with the new grant that I'll talk about at the end here, that another $1 million passes through us. It's mostly going to be supporting the school corporations. But that makes our total annual budget over $3 million.
Thank you. And maybe for people listening, they might wonder, we are the Parent Training Center. Can you speak a little bit to that three-legged stool thought of a parent and school and student and that support of how are we supporting schools? I mean, how do we help with that teamwork and collaboration when we're a parent training center?
Right. So I think that you mentioned the student being a stool, and oftentimes they are a leg, but many times, especially the little ones, they're in the middle of the circle, right? And there's kind of this encircling of support around them. And the schools plays a role, obviously, the parent plays a role, and any community agencies or other resources play a role keeping that all balanced. If any time that stool gets, I'll use stool because you said it, but it's a circle, gets out of balance, right? Whether or not it's that the school's not carrying their weight or the parent is not carrying their weight, it impacts the child. It hurts the child. So we are very intent on making sure that parents can bring their strength to that interaction. And we also really want to support the schools. Now, we know right now that schools are in crisis. We know how hard it is in this day and age to really meet all the needs of the kids. And the needs are so much more intense than they ever were. So I think appreciating that and knowing that going into a situation is very important to work out through solutions. We know that so many educators and administrators at the end of the day, they just go home exhausted. They have given everything they have. We know them personally. Many of us have been those people, right? And really a shout out to them. There are also situations where we're seeing some restructuring, where we're seeing that sometimes there's reassignments, where special ed decisions are being made by folks that don't necessarily have complete special education expertise. And so we want to be there for that as well, to make sure the procedures are happening and the rights are being respected for students. I was in a conversation with a school lawyer earlier this week, and we were kind of reflecting on how there's almost a loss of understanding what FAPE really is, free appropriate public education, that no matter what the disability, these children are entitled to a full day of education, and just the overuse of the shortened day and, some other things where the school just doesn't have the capacity to do what needs to be done. And I've said this before, but sometimes there's some freshman mistakes that are being made, with new administrators, and we want to be there to support them. We don't want to be there to disrespect or, to disparage them, but make sure that they understand that there's a responsibility here, that they have to have the knowledge to be able to execute it. And so, if we see ourselves all as advocates for the kids, including the school personnel, then I think we're going to be in a much stronger position, because, in the end, if you're having a fight, and I think you've said this, you maybe can say it again more eloquently than me, but in this game, there really are no sides, right? The only person who wins or loses is the child. And so it makes sense for the rest of us to figure that out.
Thank you for sharing that, because sometimes people want to know, and they want to know why we tell the school we're coming, and that's a courtesy, and it's one of the many things that we do to show that we're focused on the child and the team.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Dawn.
Yeah, it's a passion that, you can feel it right here. It makes your lips curl a little bit and your eyes water sometimes, and it's something we all believe in. And I don't know if everyone knows this, but Lisa and I meet on a monthly basis with the Office of Special Education at the DOE. And although we don't discuss individual cases, when we see patterns of concern across the state, we want them to know about that, because we want to strengthen the system. So you might see things that come out in the newsletter that capture some point that we make. And they, want to bring some guidance forward just to remind folks, don't forget, all students are entitled to LRE and FAPE and all of that. So it's important to us. So another thing that is important to us really is to take a look at disproportionality. We've really, this past year, every staff meeting, we've spent a little time studying that, and we dedicated our in-services to that point. And we took our data and we compared our service records with the prevalence of racial, language, and poverty groups in the areas that we serve. And sometimes we are not always serving in the same proportion as the families that exist in those regions. And so each one of us, and when I speak about us, I mean, looking at this region is my region, even if I wasn't there the whole year, but I'm going to look at this in a responsible way. And then all the rest of us that support that individual person, we're asking the question, why is that if the data doesn't match? And it's particularly important to us because the grants that fund us require us to do outreach and to target populations that are typically disenfranchised or that are disadvantaged in some way. And so, the way our organization is structured, we really can't be informed of which students have disabilities. That's private information. So we don't know who to say, hey, come to us. They have to figure that out in some ways. But there are things we can do to get our name out there and to reach communities in general, the whole community. And so we've really been taking a sharp look at that. A lot of credit to Wilner Kusik and Jane Fuentes, who are outreach coordinators. And they've really made some investments on a regular basis to our meetings, to bring that to focus. And I think that it's something that's we all have really good intentions, and we're trying to figure that out for ourselves as well. I'm really proud that on our staff, we have 5 bilingual staff members. When I tell that to any other organization, nationally and locally, we have 5 people on our staff. And Lisa, you oversee that team right now. They helped 425 families last year in our individual assistance records, which is 4% of all that we've helped. If you look at students that don't speak English across the state, that's about 6.6%. So we're still, we still have goals to set in that regard, because there's probably more than that of parents who don't speak English. But we're so proud that that's important to us and that we're taking that very seriously and working to do better. Is there anything you want to say about the bilingual team, Lisa?
I too am very proud that we have 5 bilingual staff, and that we're having all across the state, including with our bilingual staff, those hard conversations about outreach, about how do we do a better job of getting to the families who might have the most barriers in getting to us. We know that maybe we won't reach everybody all the time, but we've got to try. And as we get our name out, as you said, it's been what, 48 years or whatever, there are still families that don't know about us. And if you are a family who is at risk, underserved, English is not your first language, you're of course facing many more barriers. And we really want to remove those barriers. So we are very happy with the different programs that are going on, our interpreter training. Jill has now the Spanish webinars that are going to be happening, our presentation in January and February, where we're partnering to do the Spanish feed presentation, and the fact that our bilingual staff are intentionally trying to get their names out there, and we're trying to help them with that outreach. So we are very excited about Michelle and the fact she's able to do chat, and that our bilingual staff are helping during the times when Michelle's not there, so that we work to always have someone available that can speak Spanish from that period of time that we have chat. So we are very proud of that. I'm very proud of the bilingual team. I'm proud of all of our staff, but we are intentionally considering how to remove barriers in Indiana.
Thank you. Yeah, so another thing that I think we are that we're strengthening is our volunteer force. So this year we were very intentional about asking all of our current volunteers to reapply, to make sure all the information was good, but they also had to take a pretest. And we wanted to see, what is it that they knew about special education, and what is it that they still needed to learn. And so I did one-on-one interviews with everyone so far that has signed up in that way, and developed an individual learning plan, for those that really were interested in learning more. We want them to do continuing education. We're doing a monthly newsletter. There's a page on our website now that shows their pictures. No phone number because they're just volunteers, but you can see, we really want to give them credit and honor them for their work. So that's really exciting. And the team leaders are embracing them and bringing them into much more of a membership, that they belong with that region, thinking of ways to invite them. Lisa, every Tuesday you do a lunch with Lisa for staff, and they're invited to come to those. Have you had any volunteers so far come to your lunch with Lisa?
We have had 3 or 4 on a regular basis come, and it has been wonderful. Additionally, we have many of the new volunteers that have been that I've been reaching out to and been talking to. I think that we will just continue to build their opportunities, and that they will come and participate because they are part of our organization. That's part of what we need, because we can't be everywhere. We can't attend every case conference. We can't attend every information fair. But if we have one of our volunteers that's passionate and educated, and I really would like to call attention to the increased robust program that we have with your pre and post tests, with encouraging them and opening the door to say, please be part of some of our team meetings. Come be part of, we had some for office hours, because we do that the 4th Tuesday of every month with the special education department at IDOE. It is now just a continued and more robust welcome in, and just the fact that we're working really hard to prepare our volunteers even more than before, because there are some very unique situations, and we want them to be working with their local special education liaisons. So we have had people attending lunch with Lisa in office hours with IDOE.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Dawn, would you mind explaining, if we have a person that's either in our attendees or on our Facebook Live, if they wanted to be a volunteer, what would that process look like for them?
Yeah, on our website, there's the process is explained. If they can't find it, they can just email me directly and I'll hook them up with that. But basically, there's a link for them to fill out an application so that, we know a little bit about them, including how they see themselves volunteering. There's many ways that they may want to. They may want to just do fairs, or they may just want to help with fundraisers, or, maybe just one-on-one with parents. And so that's their way of presenting their interest. And then there's also a link for them to take the pretest. And when I see those two things pop up in my email that someone has completed them, then I'll reach out to them and give them a call. Other steps include completing a conflict of interest form, because, a code of ethics. Conflict of interest is a component of it, but a code of ethics, because we're really an ethical organization, and they have to understand, if they're going to have the brand on their badge that we're going to give them, that, there are some standards that are really important to us. Then there's things that will continue from there, where we'll have training and the invites to the things that our staff is doing. So, we've talked about how old this organization is. It was established mostly on the backs of volunteers. I mean, the history of InSource was mostly a few people who, were paid by a grant, that coordinated large groups of families that really wanted to understand this new thing called special ed. And so it in some ways, it's a return to our roots. And, I'm so delighted to meet these volunteers one at a time, because they're amazing people. I mean, many of them were in school service and just want to keep relationships. They've been in hundreds of case conferences, and they miss being there with parents to work through issues, or they really feel like they want to help parents become advocates in ways. There's people with highly educated backgrounds. There's family members, moms that are starting their own organizations, that are managing children, and children with disabilities have such needs, and still they want to give to others. They want to turn around and say, pay it forward kind of thing. These people are amazing. And, to belong to something like that is really fulfilling. So I would encourage anybody who thinks, I might want to do that. I mean, it doesn't have to be, there's no requirements. So it could just be an hour or two a month, that's fine. And to be a part of our organization, it really is a fulfilling thing. So.
And I don't know, Lisa, I was thinking that I know that I started out 23 years ago as a volunteer, and I know that the process has really changed, and we have grown. We've been very progressive. And the information that as a volunteer that I received was so invaluable. And it gave me the confidence to be able to ask really good questions sitting in case conferences, not only for myself and my son, but also for those families that I was helping through that process as well.
Absolutely, Jill. I also started off as a volunteer, and then I got approached about a position, and I couldn't believe I could get paid to do for what I love, So we have really grown that program. And Donna, I want to give you credit for really honing in on some of those particular aspects you have. And additionally, when I talked to some of the people who are interested, as you said, maybe it isn't fair. Maybe it's helping secure a location for a training. There's so many different avenues that we could use assistance. And as long as everyone is just thinking of the betterment of the child, there's so many different ways. And a lot of our staff did start out as volunteers. We have a lovely group of volunteers.
That's so interesting. Yeah, the culture of our organization, when you are speaking about this, we really value a sense of sisterhood. Now, right now, it's all ladies. It doesn't have to be, that's not one of our criteria. It just happens to be that way. But just supporting each other, being compassionate toward each other, looking out for each other, and, to pull in our volunteers as well into that spirit. I think many of our new hires have taken the time to express to me that they feel so welcomed by this organization, and so much like they became a part of something important, something good. And we take time to think about wellness as an organization, secondhand trauma, these kinds of things, because it is intense to always hear about these things that are going on. And so we take that seriously, and really want to be there for each other. So yeah, so let me talk a little bit about our super volunteers, which is our board of directors. So here's a group of people that, the work that they do really is unspoken in the background kind of thing. But we have an amazing board. Right now, we are completely full with 15 members, and the attendance is strong. We always have a quorum. They are involved and learning, and it's just a delightful experience to work with the board. Our president is Eric Melanzenko. He's got a long name that you have to practice, but Dr. Melanzenko. And he has been a fantastic leader. We have Jackie Doak as our vice president. Stephanie Gardner was our secretary. She's leaving. Her term ended she's still here till the end of the month. And taking her place is Julie Goodman. So excited for that. And Tiffany Neal is our treasurer. And the four of them have just been with us through these transitions and have been so supportive. We've made so many changes, really. Change management is tricky, even if it's good. If change comes too hard and too fast, your wheels can fall off, right? And they've been supportive. They've seen the reasons. They've given good advice. So, just really a shout out to our board, which people may not even know we have one, but we do report to the board. So, unless the two of you have another question, I'm going to go on to talk about our statewide family engagement center. Did anything come through, Lisa or Jill?
No, nothing is through on this live webinar.
All right.
I haven't had anything on our Facebook Live either.
Okay. Spring of 2022, I had applied for this to become the statewide, for InSource to become the statewide family engagement center. And we heard, like 6 months later that we weren't selected and went on with our lives. So then we got a surprise call this fall. Would you like that grant you applied for almost 2 years ago? And we're like, all right. So this grant identifies us as the Statewide Family Engagement Center. What makes this a little different than the classic InSource is that it's looking at all families, not just families with special needs. And, this aligns with what I philosophically hold to be true, and that is that you can't help special ed with special ed alone. You can't fix the system that our children are in by just working on only special education. Special education is like the canary in the coal mine. When there's a weakness in the broader system, it's going to hurt the most vulnerable children first. And so the idea of moving into this role of looking at how are families engaged in general in a systemic way really fits the next phase of our work. In the Statewide Family Engagement Center grant, similarly to how we have target populations that are underserved, underprivileged, disenfranchised, this grant has the same. It's just that special education is one of them. So, we belong to this umbrella of the focus of making sure that everyone is empowered and invited to the table. It differentiates the idea of inclusion as meaning, inclusion kind of means you're invited to my table, right? And there's a concept that we are learning about called rightful presence. It means you have a place at this table. This is your table too. And that kind of takes the concept of inclusion up a notch. And so I'm really excited to get into a model that looks at it more in that sort of way. The structure of the grant allows us to identify 5 LEAs to start off to become model sites for family engagement. Today is the deadline at 5 o'clock for the applications for LEA. So that's why I had to turn off the sound of my computer because it keeps dinging every time these application comes in. But I'm so excited to see what the schools have come up with. They were prompted to explain, what have you done so far with family engagement? Is this a priority? Is this something you value? What's your evidence, that you value that? And, what is the need there? So we're looking for sites that have need that can be addressed, but also are positioned to address it, that have the strength and conviction to move forward. So that's what we're going to be looking for in these applications. We're also going to work with those LEAs and beyond to establish asset maps to show resources across the state. There are a number of good efforts that pretty much come close to a vision that we have. So we've created an advisory council of really impressive leaders across the state who will look at our work, be critical of it, give us advice, but also help us connect resources into this project for everyone. And then by year 5, we want to be scaling this up and out, because there is the chance you can reapply and continue, just like the PTI now has gone on for almost 50 years. The same could be true of the statewide Family Engagement Center grant. So that's what we're hoping to do with that. So yeah, so are there any questions you guys have about that?
Well, one thing that I wanted to discuss a little bit rolled into the family engagement activities had to do with the CPACs, and the fact that we have been talking a lot to directors and families about special education parent advisory councils. And so please be watching on our website. Please be listening about how families and schools might work together for a special education parent advisory council, because it's a mechanism to show family involvement. And family participation is required under IDEA. And when schools answer and say, how are we showing? How can we measure family engagement? This might be one way. And it's a way to look at systemic issues, because we have a collaborative council that will perhaps look to take some assessments and gather some information and then prioritize some needs. And many times problems can be solved when everyone works together on that kind of a council, where their focus is the end result, good results for all kids. And Don, just as you were speaking, I've always felt the same way. We can't fix special ed with special ed. And the fact that inviting people to your table, it's all kids' tables. So the fact we have to look at how all of these different things will help all kids. Well, a CPAC can help all kids also, as we discuss the system and the systemic issues and concerns. So look forward to more information from InSource about that. There are about 5 CPACs now and 5 more coming. And we have documents, and we will be putting more things out through the family engagement activities. So we hope that more and more will come about throughout the state, so that maybe we'll have one in each school district.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Lisa. In the spirit of CPAC, Special Education Parent Advisory Councils, is this in alignment with what we're saying with family engagement, right? Because it means that families are there before the problems happen, right? The families are invited into leadership discussions. That, if you're just telling families what you've decided after you decided, that's not really engagement. Engagement means that you're hearing what the families have to offer, and including it in an integrated way in what you do. One of the things that I've been thinking about is how, having been a district administrator, how little attention it's easy to give very little attention to the construct of family engagement. You've got all these things that you have to accomplish. It's overwhelming. But to be able to step back and think about that in a proactive way can actually make the things you're trying to accomplish more accomplishable, right? And when I imagine what an organization can do when the parents are explaining what they need, when they have an opportunity to share what's the obstacles for them to accomplishing things. I had a little story I remembered. My son with disabilities was in science, and he had a project to do where it's a very classic project where you collect rocks, you identify them, you turn them in, right? Well, we made this a family project. We found one of those old 8-track tape boxes. It was wooden, and we kind of sanded it down and refinished it and made little compartments in it for the rocks. We took our family collection from our trips, and he put little white dots of whiteout and a little number on each rock, put it in the box. And he hand wrote little cards to explain where the rock came from and what kind of rock it was. And it was one of the last projects of the year, and he brought it in to a teacher who never really liked the fact that special ed kids got a lot of help, to be honest. And, the year ended, we forgot about it. And then the next fall, I asked the teacher, hey, what about that box? And she said, oh, I told the kids they needed to take it home or it'd be thrown out, and I just threw it out. And it's just a box of rocks, right? But it's not just. It was family vacation, and we all talked about it, and appreciating the idea that I'm here, I have these rules, this is how we do things, and if you don't catch on, too bad for you and your family, right? It's such a mild thing compared to what other families go to when there's really significant bias or significant disenfranchisement, or just a fear of school. I'm not afraid of school, but what if I were? How much more compounded that would be. I it's a tiny little story, but I think if we can appreciate that sometimes just the day-to-day that schools do with families, if they understood where families were coming from, it would just lift everybody up. And I think the switch for me, if I hadn't retired from schools, would be to realize that schools are there to serve families. Families aren't there to serve the schools, right? And that's a tricky concept. But if you've truly made that flip in your heart, you understand our mission, what we're working on.
And I so agree with that. And I believe as we look at this concept of real family engagement and CPACs and these hard conversations, those conversations are going to happen. Let's have them happen in a meaningful way where we can have some good results. It doesn't mean we won't have hard conversations. Everybody does, no matter whether it's family, work, at school. But when we all come together for that greater good, and we can set some goals and some action steps and some deliverable actions to see if we're making a difference, that's the largest part of what we can do to make a system better. And again, as you said, that was one small part. What if he would have been filled with anxiety the whole time about that, or bringing it in, or a variety of other things? We must work together to help schools be a welcoming place for kids and help those families gain the tools to be able to share their concerns, and for the administrators to even know some of the concerns. Because many times a family will call us and they are very upset, and they have reason to be. But we might say, have you spoken to your special ed director? And they don't know who that is. So we'll say, here's their name. Please tell them that I encouraged you to call. Because many times it's about learning about a process, a system. It's about learning about IDEA and Article 7. It's about learning about how to engage your school and how to change the culture of the school to be more welcoming. So it's about looking at those systems to open the doors.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think that, we're in a different era because families had a chance to see a little bit inside schools when the kids were home and the parents were being teachers. And, it might not have been the best lesson that went home because teachers might not have been prepared to do virtual. That was a hard transition for an educator to make. But still, they were expected to be teachers. So they got brought in to the conversation when it was needed. And you can't just say, now you're not invited to the conversation, because the pandemic's gone. Yeah. Jill, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that it's so nice to be able to look at this and see that this kind of makes our organization whole in the way I look at it. Because now we're not only bridging the gap with parents and special education, we're bridging that gap with schools, parents, and special education. So that, that triangle is now complete. And so now it's not just that special education component. It is all parents, all kids, all administrators. it doesn't matter. And, it's just like you said about, the schools are in the business of families. And when I sit on the school board, that's what I always said. Our business is children. That's, that's it. And, if we can keep that concept rolling, that it's the families and the children that all matter, that child will receive everything that it's entitled to, everything that's appropriate for them. And, that acronym FAPE, that free appropriate public education, that's finally achieved. And so, it's across the board now.
Yeah. Well said. So I think, when we look at all the things that we've been working on in the past year, it's a culmination of so many people. We're standing on the shoulders of so many people who have invested time and energy in this. And we really want to do right by them, right by the families that are counting on us being there for them. And, the updating of our processes has taken a lot of energy, a lot of vision and work from everybody on the staff. It's not a single person, it's everybody. And finding our place in the broader system as well to impact that. We've had many conversations on our staff about being more than just the moment or the event, but seeing ourselves as leaving a legacy, a systemic change that will outlive us. And, that's my hope for InSource too, that there's nothing that we've built here, if and when it's my time to go, will fall in, because I'm not the only one holding these things up. It's such a collaborative contribution.
And Dawn, I have to agree with that. And I've seen that firsthand, and I'm very glad that I got to see it, because for 22 years I was in the field. 22 years I was in the same area. And when I left and I knew that I wasn't going to be in the field anymore, my hope was that the next person that stepped in, they were just stepping into a role, and there would be it'd be seamless, because the foundation had already been made, from not just me, but the people previous from me, the liaisons that came before me. And that is such a good, it gives you a really good feeling to know that you have left a position, and that legacy of how well our organization runs is still going to go on. And so I've seen that so firsthand, and it was just amazing, how you can see that. This isn't just, it's not just a job. This is not just a job. This is a lifestyle, and, it's something that every one of us come from a different place in our heart of our passion and why we're still here.
Couldn't said it better, Jill.
I did want to ask you a couple things, if you don't mind, if you want to do that now, or if you had anything else.
Go right ahead.
Okay. I would like to know if you could talk to us a little bit about our Youth Source program.
Yeah. So Youth Source is Lisa Barber is and actually Lisa Paddock can talk a little more about this probably, but I'll give a little quick history. Set up to address youth directly, which is a little different than our classic approach as well, which is typically parent and school facing. And there's some adjustments being made recently that are really exciting. For a couple years, we've relied on a couple units that were created by InSource, and we're embracing, excuse me, curriculum that has been made by an authoritative source that'll allow them to do multiple units and interventions directly to youth. Our relationship with the Department of Corrections is very exciting. There's so much promise there. And I know that, that the future is bright. I'm really excited about that program. Thank you for bringing that up, because I didn't mean to neglect to mention it. Lisa, is there more you want to say, since you've been a little more involved recently?
Well, I would just say, as we have been focusing on both sides of school age, the 0 to 3 and the transition age on to 26, part of what we've been talking about with Youth Source all has to do with how do we prepare for when the bus stops coming. because families and students kept saying they didn't even realize the amount of support they had in school until the bus stopped coming. And then they felt like they'd fallen off a cliff. So we've been trying to work every year to help families and students understand and point toward that North Star of what is an education for? Part of what it's for is to be prepared to live your adult life. So in Indiana, that's been the discussion. In the nation, it's been the discussion. And at InSource, it's been the discussion. So we want to help those transition age students and beyond to prepare for competitive integrated employment, for volunteering, for being in their community. And that's very exciting. And at this time, that program's continuing to grow and what it looks like. But we will continue to utilize authoritative sources to point toward the best life for those students and help them learn the steps to reach that.
You know, I think, Lisa, this is such a great opportunity for the youth too, as well. You know, I always said that, you know, whenever we train parents, we are empowering them with that knowledge. And that's the same thing that we're doing with our students, you know, across the state. We're empowering them with some knowledge that will enable them to make good decisions and to even, you know, before they're out of school, before they turn that age of 18, these students are helping their parents make some decisions. And so we're empowering them, and that's huge to say that you've been empowered by that knowledge. So our youth is really going to be benefiting from this.
And a good point to be made is that they are the parent when they turn 18, right? So they legally have to be making those decisions.
And additionally, so that they learn about the ADA and what they need to do in college, what they need to do in employment. Those are things that many times aren't really talked about, right? And there's kind of a gap. So we're really pleased that we're starting to speak to some of those components.
Absolutely. One of the other things, Dawn, that you had mentioned was our data and that information, how we gather that. And just so everybody's clear that's listening or watching, so we have to ask about certain data. And would you mind just kind of briefly going over what that would look like? Because I know a lot of times that we will ask a parent on the phone for that data because we're gathering it for our information.
Sorry, I popped off for a little while. Chrome is set up so that as soon as it feels like I've talked too much, it just cuts me off. That's the only reason I have for it. I've tried different internet connections. I think my Chrome is just a little smarter than me.
But yeah, I was just wanting to know if you could explain the data and why we have to gather it and what that looks like whenever we're on those phone conversations with parents.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, sometimes it might feel as a parent like, why are they asking me these things? You know, this seems a little bit personal. Well, in order to get to the federal grant, we have to report, you know, I mentioned proportionality. That's an important characteristic of our data. Are we reaching the populations that we've promised to reach with our grant contract? You know, what age are the families that we're reaching? What is it that the families need, you know, between virtual and in person? All of this data is very useful to us. You've noticed how I've used it in, you know, our explanations here. So not only is it something we have to report in order to have the grant, but we're able to analyze that data to improve our services. So that's why that question, you know, those questions get asked.
Okay, Lisa, did you have any other questions?
I don't think so at this time. Maybe, Dawn, if you would just speak to, so if a family or even a school wanted to reach out, what are some of the ways that they could reach out to get a question answered?
Oh my gosh, there's so many ways, aren't there? Oh my goodness. So, you know, the website is rich with some options. So if you just go to insource.org, all of them are available there. That includes the chat that'll just pop up from the bottom. You know, that includes a contact page that'll show up, where you can, are you going to show it for us?
I bet she is.
No. Jill, why don't you walk us through that? Go ahead and you take the wheel on this.
Oh, um, so if you see here up in the left-hand corner, you'll see where you can access our Facebook page. You'll see where you can access our YouTube page and our In Touch Weekly, and also our Twitter page. And, you know, as you had mentioned earlier, Dawn, there is under our Get Help button, you can find who the liaison is in your area. You can also access the trainings, and that would be the ones on webinars, that would be in person, that would even be where our archived ones would be. And you can also access those resources. Under About Us, I don't know if this is gonna, did my screen switch for you?
You did.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So underneath here, you're going to see where our mission and our vision is. But this is also where you're going to be able to meet our staff and where those special coordinators are. And so you'll just be able to click on Meet Our Staff. You'll be able to meet our board, and our volunteers are also here. The staff directory is here as well. And you can see as of right now, it still looks like the map. That hasn't been changed yet. And you can click on any area. And like here, I've clicked on this area here, and that's Amy Rankin, who is a team leader. Also, underneath here is Auda. She is the
She's the bilingual specialist.
Yes.
my brain just went blank. I'm so
It's all
sorry.
right. But you know, that's such a good point though, Jill. So every region has both. So if you're an English speaker, you'd pick the top one. And if you were a Spanish speaker, we have someone who can speak with you.
And that's a good point too, to point out, Dawn, that if you go up here to the right-hand corner, you can also pick out the language that you need for your to be able to access our website. So just go up here and click on the language that you would need, and it will come up like that. So that's a good point. And you see here, we do have our chat feature, and you just have to click on that. But if we go back to the home page, if you scroll down, you'll be able to see how you can reach out. And here is our numbers that Dawn was talking about earlier. And there's also our donate button. And here in this, down here, you also see where you can just put your email address in there, and you can subscribe to our newsletter as well.
While you're on that page, Jill, show how you become a volunteer. I think that page is also available, where it's under Help Others at the top. The second, yes, Help Others. So there's contributions and volunteers. So all of that information is there.
We have a wonderful website. It is very inclusive. It's very easy to navigate. It's just a really good, easy website. And you see
There's
that.
There's a new page on there for the Statewide Family Engagement Center as well. We're just starting to develop that. I think it's under About Us. Let's see.
Family engagement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the acronym is EFFECT minus one of the F's, but it stands for Engaging Family Educators and Community Together. And all the links are there for this application process that is ending today. So we'll announce the LEAs, and eventually we're going to want the school corporations, the LEAs who are selected, to post videos and their progress on becoming a family engagement model site on our website. So that'll be something to look forward to.
All right. And there is also the Contact Us button. And you're more than welcome. We have our phone number, we have our insource.org web or email address, and then again, how to get a hold of your staff in your area.
Yeah, and I think under that contact, there's some choices you can click if you have a particular question, and you get an answer right back. It's a templated answer. It's not personalized, but it quickly might give you something you can search based on your interests.
And, that's a good point too, that you also bring out is the resources. We do have a plethora of resources here on the left-hand side, and you just have to pick out which one maybe that you would need. Like we have the Department of Education, and here's where you can get a copy of Article 7. There's a lot of information again that's housed here.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for sharing all this information. And we so hope that everyone listening will utilize our site and consider being a volunteer and sharing our information. Maybe you don't need it right now, but someone else might. And think about donating too. We're in that season, so many times you're looking for an organization to donate to. We would love to be the recipient of your generosity.
Thank you. It's been
Go ahead.
I just was going to say it's been such a pleasure to visit with the two of you this afternoon. I'm just so appreciative of the work that you do, and so proud to belong to such a great organization.
Thank you, Dawn.
Yes, thank you so much, Dawn. I really do appreciate you being here and updating us in a year in review. It's I can't believe it's already been a year, and we're going to be going into 2024. I do want to mention though that we will be closing our offices and for the winter break, and that is going to be January the 21st is when we close, and then we will
December.
Oh.
December.
December.
That's all right. I figured folks would figure that, but wanted to make that point.
And we will be back in our offices on Thursday, January the 4th. So we will be closing down for the winter break. But I do want to remind people that they are able to still access our website, and they can find information there at any time of the day. Dawn, do you have anything else that you would like to talk to us about?
Nothing occurs to me. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, well, thank you for being here today. Lisa, do you have anything?
I do not, and we don't have any questions at this moment.
Well,
thank you, Dawn, and thank you, Jill.
I just want to tell you, thank you so much for being here. This is our last webinar for the year. So thank you so much for being with Lisa and I throughout the year. And we will look forward to serving you in the new year with some new information. And please look for different times and days on the webinar platform. And if you need anything, please always remember to either phone us or use insource.org or insource@insource.org. So thank you again, Lisa, for being my co-host. Dr. McGrath, thank you for being here and spending the last webinar with us and updating us on our year in review with InSource. So at this time, I don't see any other questions. I don't have anything that's been posted out on our Facebook Live. So I will say thank you again, and we will see everyone in 2024.
Thank you. Have a good day.